Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of video games. We cover all kinds from the mainstream to the indie, so I hope you enjoy your stay, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. It's been 7 years since the first conduits of people with special abilities appeared, and it's only natural that once people start to get special powers, they'll start to do crazy stuff. And that led to the creation of the Department of Unified Protection, whose primary goal is to round up any and all conduits and hold them in a prison called the Curtain Case Station. That's where Abigail Walker, better known as Fetch because Reasons, is being held. Now this place isn't just a prison. It's more of a recruitment facility for the DUP, and Augustine, the woman in charge, wants Fetch to join them. But Fetch has been through some traumatic events that she needs to work through before she can do pretty much anything, and Augustine can't help her do that if she doesn't know the woman's story. So after a bit of coaxing, Fetch finally starts to tell her what happened to her and how she ended up there. Her life had been rough from the minute her parents found out about her powers. The minute they learned that she was different, they immediately called the DUP to get her taken away. But her brother Brent helped her run away before they could get there. The two of them lived on the street and did a lot of unsavory things to get by. But it was the job that they pulled 2 years ago, the one that was supposed to get them out of Seattle altogether, that led to things going bad. Fetch didn't want to do the job at all, but her brother said that it would pay enough for them to disappear entirely, and he would take care of all of it. All she had to do was avoid using her powers until everything was done. That whole not using her powers thing failed immediately since the cops came around looking for her brother, and to distract them she runs off with her super speed, which also makes her glow like a neon sign. That makes the cops completely forget about her brother and call the DUP to deal with the rogue conduit. Knowing there's a conduit in the area would cause the DUP to flood the place, but Fetch figured that she and her brother would be long gone before they got there. But how often do things ever go as planned? Her running off like that made things way too hot in the area for Brent to complete the job, so Fetch heads off to do it herself. He was supposed to get a red duffel bag from a penthouse, and even though he doesn't have a clue what's in it, somebody's paying him a whole lot of money to grab it, so it's worth taking. Obviously, a lot of other people were after it too, because when Fetch reaches the penthouse, some people have already broken in and killed the guy Brent was supposed to meet. Not wanting any witnesses, they try to kill Fetch, but on top of being able to run fast, she can shoot lasers from her fingertips, so killing her isn't exactly easy, which the small army of men find out the hard way. Unfortunately, before she can get the bag, a bomb goes off in the room, destroying everything and blowing Fetch out of the window. She calls Brent to let him know that a bunch of Russians had beat her to the place, and since they're part of a gang called the Occurrence, he knows exactly who they are. To make a bad situation worse, if they knew about the penthouse, then they'll know about Brent's boat, which means the two of them need to leave immediately. So Fetch starts to head to the boat, but Brent calls her and tells her to stay away since the Occurrence have already made it there. She's obviously not going to leave her brother to fight alone, but she tends to have panic attacks in stressful situations, and if she loses control of her powers while she's fighting the gang members, they'll kill her. She ignores her brother's warnings and heads there anyway, but when she gets there, the boat's on fire, and the only thing she finds of her brother's is his cell phone. Of course, she starts to freak out and blame herself, because even back when the two of them had been in danger, they had one rule: Fetch was never supposed to use her powers, and the moment she decided to break that rule, she lost her brother. She spent the whole night looking for him, but when she couldn't find him anywhere, she went back to the dock and ran into a weird and clearly shady man who just so happened to be looking for Brent too. When Fetch realizes that this guy's not with the Occurrence and he's planning on looking for Brent, she wants to work with him to hunt him down. But the guy's not all that interested in working with a seemingly distraught girl. He changes his mind fast when he realizes that she's the sister Brent was always talking about. The guy's name is Shane, and aside from being someone who worked with Brent, he's also a bit of a weirdo. Oddball or not, he's positive that the Occurrence have kidnapped Brent since they've snatched a lot of his people, and he has a few ideas about where they might be holding them. After Fetch shows him that she's a conduit, he points her in the general direction of where Brent might be, and he promises to call her on Brent's phone if he gets any news. The thing is, the Occurrence don't exactly sit still for long, so once he finds them, Fetch will have to be ready to move. While she's running around hunting for her brother, some of the Occurrence find her, and instead of questioning any of them like she should have, she kills them all. That's not the most efficient way of tracking her brother down, but lucky for her, Shane's gotten a bit of information about what the occurrence are about to do next. They have a large shipment of guns that they're about to receive, so if Fetch helps him steal them, he'll be able to have 50 armed men out on the streets kicking in doors and hunting for her brother. Since she has no leads of her own, she goes to help Shane with his plan to relieve the gang of their guns. Turns out his plan was just to break into their building, load the weapons in his truck, and drive off with Fetch riding on top of the thing and shooting the people who come after them. Among the ranks of bad plans, this one sits pretty high on that list, but despite being attacked by both gang members and cops, since the two of them are driving through the city destroying stuff, they manage to get the weapons to Shane's people, and he keeps his word and sends them out to hunt for Brent. Unfortunately, some of his crew get seen snooping around by the occurrence, which forces Fetch to go out and play security guard for Shane's people. Since they are looking for a brother and she wants to get back at the occurrence for taking him in the first place, it's a win-win for her. For someone who spent most of her time not using her powers, Fetch is very good at mass murder, which helps motivate Shane's people to hunt a little bit harder for her brother, if for no other reason than to keep her from shooting her lasers at them. One of his people heard that a high-ranking occurrence was seen out in Georgetown, and if Fetch follows him, the man may lead her to where they're keeping Brent. Granted, walking behind him is not going to work because honestly that never should work since it's pretty easy to see when somebody's following you. So Shane figures using the city surveillance cameras is a better way to follow the guy. Considering the fact that hacking requires a unique set of skills, it's not easier to do at all. But he already has a woman named Jenny tapped into the system, and she links up with Fetch through a phone to give her a link to the cameras. Jenny's a city worker who owes Shane, so she knows quite a bit about how detailed their facial recognition software is, so she has no problem finding Fetch's guy. They see that the man was not so subtly following a woman. Apparently, aside from murder, kidnapping people is a normal part of the occurrence business practices, and that woman that the guy was following was next on their list of victims. Using the cameras to track him, Fetch and Jenny see the man kill a guy who tried to help the woman before he snatches her and puts her in a car. Fetch was too late to save the woman, but her kidnapper dropped his phone, which Jenny can use to figure out where he spends most of his time. Because this city is just as bad as Gotham, Fetch doesn't get a break at all. While Jenny's trying to find out where the occurrence take their prisoners, Shane calls to say that his people have gotten attacked and are pinned down, so Fetch heads off to back them up while increasing her body count. The occurrence aren't exactly happy with Shane's people since they stole his guns and started breaking into their stuff, so this fight has turned into a full-fledged gang war. Shane's happy about that since it means Fetch can put a real dent in his competition, but she's not exactly excited about it because the more chaos she causes, the quicker the DUP will show up. And if they do, it'll make it way harder for her to find her brother, especially if they catch her and lock her up. The time it took for Fetch to put a serious dent in the occurrence members was enough for Jenny to find out where the hostages are being held, which means it's time to finally hunt down her brother. It definitely won't be easy because after everything she's done, they are on high alert. The gang has a lot of people locked up in shipping containers, but with them having to deal with a rampaging conduit, Brent manages to get free, and he calls his sister to let her know that he's alright, at least for the moment. There's still a lot of people around, so he hides while Fetch tries to get away. As luck would have it, that's the moment the DUP decides to show up, so since Fetch can't get to her brother, she sends Shane over to his hiding place so he can pick him up while she tries to escape from the DUP. Even though the DUP soldiers are conduits too, Fetch gets away from them and gets to her brother just in time to see Shane take him hostage. Since Fetch has proven to be so useful, Shane doesn't want her to stop working for him until he's taken over the city, and the only way to make her work for him is to take her brother. But he promises to let him go after she does a few more jobs for him, which anyone with 2 brain cells knows is a lie, but unfortunately for her, she doesn't have a choice but to play along. With the occurrence gang pretty much dealt with, Shane wants to force the chief of police to make a deal with him. So he has Fetch doing a lot of things to make life uncomfortable for the city, and every time she completes a job, he claims she's just one step closer to getting her brother back. She knows he's lying, and since the city is full of DUP members now, she figures she needs to come up with another plan to get her brother away from Shane. That's going to be a little difficult because the DUP has started rounding up Shane's people to draw out Fetch, and Shane wants her to free them. It's not like she has a choice, so she heads off to attack the DUP, who are much harder to deal with than the regular gang members since the group is full of conduits who were trained to catch other conduits. In the past, Fetch wouldn't have had any chance against the conduit catchers, but she's been using her powers so much that she's gotten far better with them, so now she's basically a one-woman army. She easily frees Shane's people, so he's nice enough to let her talk to her brother so she can know that he's at least still alive. But he's only going to stay that way for as long as she works for Shane, and everyone knows that he won't ever let either of them go. Jenny's aware of that too, and since Shane's been holding things on her that she doesn't want to talk about, she knows exactly what Fetch is going through, and she's willing to help her, discreetly. Shane's been getting police officers to work for him by using the oldest trick in the book, bribery. And by buying off the cops, he's getting access to their drones, which lets him watch the entire city. Fetch will never be able to look for her brother in secret as long as Shane has access to those. So Jenny starts feeding her the routes that the drones travel on so she can blow them up. Since the things are about $90,000 a piece, they won't be replacing them anytime soon. With the drones dealt with, Jenny sends Fetch a location where she thinks Shane is keeping his prisoners. He started doing the same thing that the occurrence had, and he's been locking his enemies up inside of cargo containers. Her brother is probably in one of those, but once Fetch starts attacking his people, she won't have a whole lot of time to find her brother before Shane kills him. The good news is one of her powers is super speed, so she gets to the containers and deals with the guards before Shane ever finds out. The problem is all of the containers are empty. Shane had figured something was up when the police drones started blowing up. The only person who knew he had access to those was Jenny. So to see if she had turned on him, he let her get fake info that said that he was keeping prisoners in crates to see if she'd tell Fetch. Since she did, it proved that she had turned on him, so he did the only thing that you do with traitors. He kills her and leaves her body in an alley so Fetch can understand what will happen to her brother if she breaks his rules. Now that she understands her place in all of this, Shane has another job for her. He wants a meeting with the chief of police. But the man has a whole lot of cops around him, so he needs Fetch to lure them away however she can. If his meeting goes well, Shane figures he'll finally be in control of all of Seattle, and since he'll finally have what he wants, he'll be able to let Brent and Fetch leave. With that little bit of extra motivation, Fetch starts causing as much chaos in the city as she can, which draws the cops off, letting Shane get his alone time with the chief. With all of the chaos Fetch causes, the chief agrees to give Shane the same deal he gave to the occurrence, as long as Fetch leaves the city. Since he has what he wants, Shane tells Fetch where he's keeping her brother. She heads over there immediately before Shane changes his mind, but when she gets there, it turns out to be another trap. Shane didn't want her getting her brother then coming after him, so he locked her in a building and fills it with poison. While that was a pretty smart way to kill her, he greatly underestimated how powerful Fetch was, and she breaks out of the building. Since Shane wanted her dead, she decides it may be time to go after him, but she has no idea where to find him or her brother. So she beats up some of his people, steals one of their headsets so she can figure out where they were heading, and decides that the best way to draw Shane out is to blow up all of his trucks that are shipping drugs through the city. She destroys them all and kills a lot of Shane's people in the process, which pisses him off enough to make him tell Fetch where he is so he can kill her himself. As soon as she walks into the building, Shane sneaks up behind her and doses her with some drugs that makes her hallucinate. Then he has his people try to kill her, which is actually a pretty good plan. It still doesn't work. She kills them all, but what she didn't realize is that Shane had brought her brother into the building, and in her doped up state, she kills him. While she's sitting there crying over her brother's dead body, the DUP capture her, which is how she ended up in Augustine's prison. While Augustine had made Fetch tell her story, the woman had already knew what happened. Not only that, she had found and captured Shane. As soon as Fetch sees him, she blows up the entire side of the prison. I have no clue how he managed to live through that, but after all of the chaos her attack caused, Shane manages to steal one of the DUP vehicles and runs away. Fetch chases after him, along with a whole lot of other DUP members. She fights her way past them, and after a long time she finally gets to kill Shane. Augustine's people were watching the whole incident, and now that she's executed Shane, Augustine thinks that Fetch is ready for the next step on her path to becoming a DUP agent. She's not the only one that's on this forced conscription plan, but since none of these conduits have volunteered for this, they're planning on escaping at the first chance that they get. And that chance is coming up very, very soon. This concludes the story of Infamous First Light. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Donate to the channel if you can, and I'll see you all next time.